I hope that you are all enjoying yourselves, connecting, building relationships, learning a ton, and ready to hear from Kelsey Payne here from the Snoqualmie Tribe on 6PPD-Q. I'm Kelsey Crane. I work for the community of Thurston County. And without further ado, silence your cell phones, disconnect from your cell phones. This presentation is being recorded, and we're going to get going.
Thank you so much, Kelsey, for the introduction. And thank you all for being here. And thanks for keeping the energy high. I know lunch is just an hour away. So thank you for coming here with your questions and your good energy. I really appreciate it. So my name is Kelsey Payne, and I am the water quality manager for the Snoqualmie Indian Tribe. And today we're going to talk about a pilot study that we've started for 6PPD-Q on the Snoqualmie Reservation. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about 6PPD-Q because we've already had some really excellent presentations. We all saw that wonderful video from Payne County this morning, but just want to kind of, put it into the context of the regular person on the street. 6PPD-Q has been a really scary thing that's popped up in just the last few years. A lot of people still don't know about it, but more and more I'm kind of hearing people go, oh yeah, that tired us, yeah. So it is kind of slowly getting into the consciousness of our society. And there's been a lot of really scary headlines about all of the dangers to coho salmon, but then also a lot of really exciting work that we've heard some about already, and we're going to continue to hear about today, just about, all the breakthroughs that we've been having. So I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about why 6PPD-Q is important to the Snoqualmie Tribe, to walk through the study that we did on the Snoqualmie Reservation and kind of how we designed it. And then we'll spend a little time at the end with some preliminary results. So coho salmon and the Snoqualmie Tribe go way back, and I'm talking time immemorial. They've had this relationship with coho salmon. They have been eating the salmon in relationship with the salmon for all this time, but it's not just, the ancient days that this is happening. There are still tribal members who are out on the Snoqualmie River and its tributaries fishing for coho. So this relationship really continues into the modern day. And this is something that the tribe is really concerned about, these coho populations being in decline, and especially with 6PPD-Q and this, chemical. This is something that the tribe is really interested in learning more about and being a leader on. The Snoqualmie River in the greater Snohomish watershed is really important for coho populations. It's estimated between 25 and 50% of the coho that are in Puget Sound originate from the Snohomish Basin, of which the Snoqualmie River is a big factor. We are pumping out coho on the Tolt and Griffin Creek, some of these other tributaries in the Snoqualmie River. And so, you might ask yourself like, oh, the Snoqualmie is way in the upper watershed. Are you as concerned about 6PPD-Q? For the amount of coho in that area, we absolutely are. So that's something that I wanted to bring to your attention today. But for the Snoqualmie Tribe, it's not just about salmon. It's absolutely about kind of this bigger picture of watershed health and looking at aquatic habitats as a whole. We've heard today that coho are the most affected by 6PPD-Q, but there's a lot of information. We are interested in the sublethal effects for other salmon, especially the little redfish, our kokanee sockeye salmon. This event is where tribal members are going out in the canoe and actually taking kokanee fry and putting them in Lake Sammamish. These populations of coho have been absolutely decimated. There's been a lot of work to bring them back. So understanding how 6PPD-Q can relate to other life stages and other salmon is going to be really important, but not just salmon. Talking about amphibians, talking about other wildlife, these are the things that the Snoqualmie Tribe really cares about and looks at with a larger perspective. So all that to say is that the Snoqualmie Tribe would like to be part of the leadership group when it comes to stormwater and 6PPD-Q. And the Snoqualmie Tribe has already taken some steps to kind of shepherd that in on the Snoqualmie Reservation. So my next few slides are going to be talking about some of the green stormwater infrastructure that we've already incorporated on the reservation. Bioswales. We have 5 bioswales in the employee parking lot at the bottom of the hill of the Snoqualmie Reservation. The reservation sits on this really large hill. So at the bottom of the hill is kind of where all of this drainage collects. So that's where our bioswales are. They were planted in 2011. I wonder if I can. Okay, never mind. We'll see that over here a little bit. Planted in 2011, and that biofiltration mix that we're put in was like 70%, 30% compost mix. So kind of similar to your typical, perfect, thank you. Your kind of typical rain garden mix. That's kind of what we're working with. So now that these bioswales have been here for about 15 years, we're seeing them get really lush and full. We still need to keep up on the maintenance, but you know, they seem to be doing a pretty good job of bioswaling. And then the one that I'm really excited about was a project that I got to work on, which is our floating treatment wetlands. I'm not going to have a lot of time to talk about floating treatment wetlands today, but if you are interested in floating treatment wetlands, come find me, because I'm a big floating treatment wetland nerd, and I really love talking about wetlands and learning more about floating treatment wetlands. So if you're working on one, come find me. These ones were installed at the end of 2023. So we've got kind of this first year of data that shows that we have a slight cooling effect. We actually didn't put the floating treatment wetlands in with any thoughts to 6PPD-Q at all. We were really interested in bringing down the temperature of this large stormwater pond. It's about 4/5 of an acre, and there is no tree cover, so it gets hot. So we're really looking at what we can do to kind of cool the stormwater pond, but also have those additional filtration effects and also increase habitat on the reservation at the same time. As you can see, okay, we'll test the clicker now. We've got our goose family that's decided to nest on them this year, but we see snakes stunning and shedding their skins, and all sorts of birds using them as well. So all of that to say, floating treatment wetlands are a multi-benefit process, and we're really interested to see how they could be impacting 6PPD-Q. We had a couple of study questions for our pilot study. How does the Snoqualmie Reservation contribute to 6PPD? Is the green stormwater infrastructure in place helping to reduce 6PPD? And then does the water leaving the reservation really meet those water quality standards? Little caveat, the Snoqualmie Tribe does not yet have water quality standards that they administer. So for now, we're putting that 12 nanograms per liter state standard as kind of like our placeholder. But one day the Snoqualmie Tribe will have water quality standards, and they'll be super awesome. So I want to back up a little bit and just show you what the Snoqualmie Reservation looks like. I think it's helpful to kind of look at it in context. You can see a lot of, pretty healthy forests kind of all around, and then kind of smack dab in the middle of it, there's a lot of impervious surface, which is only increasing because the Snoqualmie Tribe just built a new hotel. Yeah, definitely a lot of places where stormwater runoff can be. We're also right off of I-90, so a pretty big polluter in that sense. And we're also off of North Bend Way, which is also a very busy road. So we've got kind of a lot of different sources that are coming from around the Snoqualmie Casino and the reservation itself, and then the reservation. So I want to walk you through really quickly some of the study design locations. We have 3 streams running through the Snoqualmie Reservation. The first one here is Coal Creek. We're going to ignore Coal Creek for a minute, just because it's way up here. For those of you who are tuning in online, it's up in the northwest section here. So the ones that we're looking at are Stream A and Stream B. I know, very clever, but what can you say? We're scientists. We like to keep it simple. So the first point I'm going to draw your attention to in the bottom left corner here is A1. That is where the stream enters the Snoqualmie Reservation. PLC stands for parking lot collector. That's where the 5 bioswales I was talking about in the employee parking lot are going to accumulate together. And there's kind of this ponded area where the water's allowed to settle out. And then we've got the stormwater pond here, which is doing a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to processing stormwater through the reservation. We've also got our catch basin here at the bottom, talking about our gray stormwater infrastructure. This is going to be collecting a lot of that runoff from the upper parking lots. We've also got this basket, this Canadian basket that's kind of catching the effluent from the pond before it's actually entering Stream A again. And then A6 is where we actually see the water leaving the reservation. Stream B is much more straightforward. If you remember back to the slide where we kind of showed the reservation in context, you remember that there's a lot of forest around here. So all we have is C8, where it enters the reservation, and B7X, where it leaves the reservation. All this beautiful stream is surrounded by really nice riparian buffer. So kind of a nice little comparison too, to kind of see, you know, how the green stormwater infrastructure is holding up compared to just having some nice riparian buffers. So a little bit about our sampling plan. We, of course, working with the Department of Ecology, put together a quality assurance project plan. I'm sure you all love your QUAPs as much as I do. So we had some considerations when we were looking for the rain events that we wanted to sample at. We wanted to make sure that we had at least that 0.2 inches of rainfall. We didn't make a maximum. We just wanted to make sure that we had enough rain to really see that 6 ppd. We needed to see at least an hour of rainfall for 6 ppd. And then for the sampling period, this was the trickiest part. We needed one sample at the beginning of the storm event, so within 4 hours of the beginning of rainfall. And then we took a second sample, which was just a few hours after that initial sample. So for example, if your rain is starting at 5:30 a.m., you need to be finished with your first round of sampling by 9:30 a.m., finish with your next round of sampling by 1:30 p.m., pack it all up, send it over to the lab. That's kind of what our days typically look like. And so, yeah, this is us actually out there doing the work. We've got a couple of coolers, we've got our labeled bottles, we're trying not to contaminate our own samples, so we're wearing gloves, got our checklist, and we're ready to go. Trying not to get run over in the parking lot. We got some high-vis gear. And it was a lot of fun. It was definitely a challenge to kind of catch the rains just right. But it was a really good experience. And if you're interested in doing a similar study like this in your own system, let me know. I definitely have lots of lessons learned. So I want to walk through the results really quickly. We had variables amounts of rainfall. But like one little one kind of made it into our 0.2 inches. Unfortunately, you kind of have to commit once you start. So if you get a little less rainfall than you're expecting, too bad. But we were still very, very close to that initial rainstorm. We met our crop requirements most of the time. Couple of times we were just outside that first sampling window, but within the realm of reason. So we've kind of grouped these all together and decided to include them. You can see we've got our date events started in October. We've got our first 6 samples that are kind of going through the end of February. We actually have 2 additional samples that we took this spring. Haven't had a chance to incorporate them into our data set yet, but the final report will reflect that. Okay, so getting down to the nitty gritty. Here are some of our initial results. So this is based on site, and this is just kind of that, you know, aggregate of our samples. And you can see that we do have some 6 ppd hotspots on the reservation. The worst offender is that catch basin that's kind of at the bottom of the upper parking lot. Yeah, and not a surprise. That's, you know, kind of doing a lot of that catching, but it's not actually going through your green stormwater infrastructure yet. So yeah, we're seeing, kind of that median of 175-ish, but gets up to over 400 nanograms per liter. So definitely a hot spot for sure. Another hot spot, which, there we go. I wasn't expecting as much, was that lower parking lot area. Maybe I should have known this because we have employees that are coming to the casino 24/7. It's a really busy parking lot. But we're seeing that there are some high concentrations there as well. This is not necessarily bad news because a lot of the 6-PPD that's being captured there is getting infiltrated into the soil and into that, biofiltration media. So not necessarily going straight back into the stream. Those are the two that kind of stuck out to me. Something else that I thought was interesting was that you can see once we're getting into the stormwater pond, that level of 6-PPD, those nanograms per liter, really dropping to kind of closer to kind of that 50 nanograms per liter. Pretty big difference from when you see it kind of showing up for the first time in that catch basin. And then I wanted to talk quickly, because we spent all this time doing kind of the early sample versus the late sample, how 6-PPD-Q moving through the system in the course of 8 hours. The answer is, it depends. We have at our catch basin, we were seeing higher concentrations early versus late. There was a huge spread on this data, so whether you could call it statistically significant, a little questionable, but we're looking at trends. This is a pilot study. Areas where you can see that effect a little more strongly are areas where we've got kind of high rushing water. A1 is an area where we're getting kind of high flow off of this pipe that's just coming directly off of North Bend Way. So the water is really moving through there. Areas where we saw either no effect or an opposite effect were kind of areas where the water was just sitting for a little while. I thought that was a pretty interesting finding, that some of these areas where we're kind of seeing stormwater collect and settle and spend a little time before it's moving on. We're really seeing either similar levels of 6-PPD a little bit later on, or maybe even a potential small increase. I realized that I didn't mention something kind of important. What about 6-PPD as it's actually leaving the reservation? B7X going through that beautiful riparian area, well, like 2-3 nanograms per liter at most. Beautiful, meets standards. A6, I would say, again, that median number, we're probably around 12 nanograms per liter. It depends on the storm event. We had some storm events where we had, over ½ inch of rain. Those, I think that there's some room for improvement on those higher volume storm events. So back to our study questions. Does the Snoqualmie Reservation contribute to 6-PPD? Yes, it does. We definitely have some 6-PPD inputs. Does the green stormwater infrastructure on the reservation help reduce 6-PPD? Again, yes, I think we can definitely make the case that it does. Does water leaving the reservation meet those water quality standards? For the most part, again, a little bit of room for improvement on that stream A, especially because that's a more impacted stream. But on the whole, really happy to see that our green stormwater infrastructure is doing its job. I always like to leave with some lessons learned, because, especially when you're doing these studies for the first time and really in place, there's a lot that goes well, but then there's also a lot that, you can learn from your mistakes. And so I think that this has been pointed out in previous presentations, but I would recommend looking for alternatives to storm chasing. That was a real challenge. We're a team of 2. That is the entire water quality program. So kind of balancing those needs and our different grants, it was a real challenge to make it out and make sure that we got the number of samples that we needed. Today, there's going to be a presentation on the passive 6-PPD-Q samplers. I'd really recommend going to that. That's a new and exciting technology. if you have an area where you have a consistent depth of water, using an auto sampler is another option that could be useful, especially if you're like me and your people power is limited. Make sure that you have a warranty on your equipment. Yeah, everybody's laughing because I'm sure that others have run into this situation. We had an issue where we lost a small piece of our sampling pole, which we really needed to get into some of these areas. And our company doesn't manufacture the individual parts, they only sell them as a whole. So we were fortunate that we did have a warranty. We were able to get our parts, you know, the pole replaced so that we could get back out there and sample. Just something to think about as you're selecting your items. Something that I wanted to share that went well is that we worked very closely with the Manchester Environmental Laboratory when we were coming up with, you know, our protocols, when we were going through our QOP and working out how we were going to be handing off samples. They were so wonderful to work with. And I really think that it helped us to feel really confident in the data that we received and make sure that we had the highest quality samples that we could. So for looking to the future, we're really hoping to continue 6PPD-Q, kind of some great preliminary results, but still a limited data set and something that we'd really like to expand upon. We're definitely looking for how we can incorporate these kind of timed grab samples with some other ways that we could collect 6PPD-Q and still get some quality information. We're also interested in spending a little more time looking at the work that biofiltration media is doing some more soil testing, possibly doing a little bit of a retrofit and a revamp on our bioswales to see if, you know, after 15 years, doing a little bit of fresh media and some new plants are going to kind of help revitalize that system, and really looking at where the 6PPD-Q is ending up in our green stormwater infrastructure, and possibly an opportunity to bring back those floating treatment wetlands, you know, really looking at whether those are taking up 6PPD-Q as well. Okay, I gotta end with a few thank yous. Thank you to the Department of Ecology for funding this project, and especially Madison, who's here in the audience. Thank you so much. I worked with them a lot to put this proposal together. I also want to thank my peers at the Snoqualmie Tribe for supporting our work. Jen Harkey, Logan Baker, Daniel Yeager helped me with the field work, but also just the people who were so gracious when I had to cancel last minute meetings because the rain is good and I gotta get out there. Yeah, I had some very gracious coworkers, which I appreciate. All right, and with that, I'll turn it back to our moderator for questions. Thanks, Leslie. C8 was the beginning of Stream B. So it was kind of that southern point on the reservation where it's just entering off of North Bend Way. And yeah, I noticed that that too was also a little bit high. And what I'd say is that's probably a couple of factors, definitely North Bend Way being one of those, but also some of that upper parking lot, what they call the VIP parking area, kind of is kind of in that that area as well. And I would not be surprised if we were also getting some inputs directly to the stream from there. We don't have as much green stormwater infrastructure kind of in the upper part of our of the Snoqualmie Tribe's reservation, just because the majority of it eventually channels down to the bottom of the hill. But definitely something to consider. It's nice to see that by the time it's leaving the reservation, it's gone through that really beautiful riparian area, and we're seeing that 6PPD kind of leaving the system, but at the same time, definitely noted that there, yeah, some good inputs at C8. Well spotted. I thought the same. I was really surprised by that high level of concentration in the parking lot. I can only speculate at this point, but there are a couple of factors. One, I have seen some high speed parking lot. There are some people who are late to work and they're like really running through there. But I also think that it might have to do with our shuttle system. They have shuttles coming through there like every minute, and it's not high speed by any means, but it's definitely more than just the people who are parking in there. We've got just a constant rotation of shuttles that are taking people up to the Snoqualmie Casino. So that may have some impact as well. But I agree, and it's a lot for what you would expect for just even a large parking lot.
I'm gonna speculate that the turning mechanism with the wheel and friction that that creates is going to create more wear.
Yeah, that's a fair question. So there's one main inlet to the pond is what I'll say. And a lot of the stormwater that comes from those upper parking lot areas is piped down kind of through this secondary riparian area under the creek into that stormwater pond. That's the main inlet. There is a small overflow from the parking lot collector as well, where those bioswales are kind of accumulating. Again, yeah, you can kind of see that PLC that kind of pops into there. It's really infrequent that we ever have to do that. It can actually hold a fair bit of stormwater before it has to overflow. So yeah, I would say the majority is kind of an inlet that comes in right about here, and then the outlet comes here. It would have been really interesting, and maybe we should consider this for future studies, kind of doing it an inlet and outlet comparison. Right now, we really were only kind of measuring this like more outlet location and then the outfall as well. But yeah, it would be really interesting to see if there are any differences within there. Here's the best that I could do to try to maintain some semblance of sanity. We look at a forecast, looking even 5 days out, absolute waste of your time. It's got to be 3 days or less. I really recommend taking a close look at what sources you're looking at. Some online resources are better than others. We relied heavily on the National Weather Service North Bend station. Yes, Weather Underground is like fine. Most others are like kind of garbage. So, definitely think about where you're looking at for your rain predictions. I think also, you can definitely see in how closely we were able to follow the clock throughout our entire thing. We were very, nervous and really wanted to make sure we get it right at the beginning. At the end, we were kind of able to figure out what kind of storm event was going to be the best. We're really looking for this precipitation peak where you're getting kind of like a hot rain event in a couple of hours for this type of study where you're really trying to see like the higher loading end of 6PPD-Q. I think that there are probably other types of methods that you can use to kind of look at storm events where you have a larger spread of rainfall over kind of a longer period of time. I'm sure you're going to still get some really good 6PPD-Q accumulation there. But for this study, when we were looking at whether a rainstorm was going to be a good fit or not for sampling, we were kind of looking for that sharp peak. That is so fair, and also not incredibly helpful. This is part of our baseline monitoring program and our 319 stormwater sampling program. So there are additional letters that you do not need to know anything about for this. And I do apologize for that. This is, I kind of wanted to show like, oh, we've got some sampling over here and here. Like we're really trying to look at the whole system as thoroughly as we can. And then we really just kind of selected a few like choice spots for this event. So please continue.
Yeah, so I'm particularly interested in sequential sites that are going down the creek, because you said you saw improvement as the creek went into an area with a lush riparian area.
Yes, that's stream B, so C8 and B7X, and those are the 2 points we had. So we didn't do, when we do our 319, our 106 baseline monitoring, we also kind of have this intermediate point in between. Would be interested to see kind of what the gradient is between C8, E9, and B7X. just for, you know, keeping things tight and for funding purposes, we decided to do just the two. Be interesting to see kind of how we're looking halfway through that riparian area.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see if it's just dilution or if you're actually getting attenuation of 6PPD. They're actually big some stuff.
Absolutely.